Nearly 6 months ago, I started my online community, the Aperitivo Lounge. And little did I know that it would teach me so much about living here in Italy, but also change my perspective on a few things. And so, in today's video, I'm going to be breaking down the key lessons that building that online community has taught me and how you can apply that to your life if you are planning to move to Italy or you are already here setting up your life. The first key lesson it taught me is that you have to show up for your dreams. Now, this might sound very woo woo and very whimsical, and especially now, I would say, with like global events and the way that things are panning out around us. But in that way, I think it's even more important than ever to show up for them. This dream of starting my Aperitivo Lounge community, I'd had for like about a year before. There'd been a few iterations. It started off under a different name that I was going to call it Expats in Bloom. And then I kind of fell out of love with the term expat and kind of pondered on it for a few months. And then I started to doubt myself and think that I wouldn't be able to create something of value. And so it took a bit of time for this dream to come to fruition, but it was always niggling away at me in the back of my mind. And I knew it was something that I needed to follow through on. And maybe it's the same thing for you. Maybe you have this wild dream of moving to Italy and you just can't shake it. Like you've tried to concentrate on other things, you've tried to focus on this or that, but there's always something in the back of your mind going, you know what you really want to do. Or maybe you're here in Italy already and you have an idea for the way that you want your life to be here, but you are thinking it should be another way instead. But there's always something in the back of your mind telling you that it's not the correct thing and you should go back to what it is you originally want to do. I think we all arrive at this point in our lives, and sometimes we allow external influences to sway us and take us off course. Sometimes we get worried and panicked by world events and situations that are really out of our control, and we allow those to dictate the path that we're going to take in life. But ultimately, let me tell you, you need to show up for your dreams. I look at what I've created so far to date within my community, and I'm so incredibly proud. Like, I look at the catalogue of masterclasses we've got and the exciting ones that we've got to come. I look at the conversations that are happening in the community, and I just think I did it. And if I hadn't have done that, I wouldn't have brought this amazing group of people together, and I wouldn't have been able to help people in the way that I've always felt called to do so. So it's so important that you show up for your dreams. There'll always be doubts. There'll always be a reason not to show up. And I think that is what too many people lean into. But it's really, really vital that you do. The second key lesson that I've learned from building my online community here in Italy is that you get out what you put in. Now, community spaces are this, like you can be a passive member of a community, in which case you read, but maybe you don't comment very much or you don't really interact with other people. But then I think your experience within a community environment in that sense is never going to be as valuable as somebody who is always showing up, they're commenting, they're engaged, they're, ready to be at all the live calls. And, they just naturally want to be a part of everything that the community has to offer. That person's experience is going to be so much more valuable than somebody who just reads but doesn't really allow themselves to fully engage. Now, I would say that within my community, I have seen people who do show up and do make an effort. And it has been those people that have actually been able to form real connections within the community. I'm talking about in-presence meetups, helping people find homes here in Italy, which was really, really special. And also like just supporting each other through the move here and actually being able to make real progress with their dreams. Because that's the thing, like, I think sometimes you can find people that join community spaces like this and they want to get as much as they can from them. And they'll get what they need and then they'll go. But it's those people that are showing up and they're there for it all to help others, but also to gain for themselves that I really, really think benefit the most. And it's the same with your life here in Italy. You get out what you put into your life in Italy. If you stay at home a lot of the time, you don't really make the effort to form connections. You are waiting for people to come to you or waiting for people to speak to you. You are kind of quite closed in that sense. Then, of course, what you're going to receive on the back of it is going to be minuscule compared to the fact that if you're open to something and you're willing to put the effort in and you try again and again and again, you might fall down but you get back up again and you just never give up. Your experience in Italy in that case is going to be so much more valuable, because not only are you going to be learning lots of lessons along the way, which are eventually going to shape you as a person and make you feel better about your experiences, but you're also likely to start to form those connections, because I think people can have different experiences here, but predominantly connections here take a lot of time to build. It's not like you show up and, instantly you're best friends with everybody that you say hello to. Like, everything takes time, but you've got to be putting that work in. You've got to be making that effort to really gain something of value back. And I can say that all of the connections and the life that I've built now has come because I have done that. I've pushed myself out of my comfort zone. I've tried to gain as much as I can from this experience. And it was when I learned this concept, I think, that I radically improved myself. It wasn't always this way. When I first moved here, I was perhaps a little bit more reserved, didn't really make as much of an effort, felt a little bit like a fish out of water. But now, especially now, like, having started this community, having seen just how much value people are gaining from it by contributing themselves, I think that it's a philosophy that I'm really starting to remember in every aspect of my life. When I'm in social situations now, I'm perhaps giving more than I may have done before, because I'm realizing that when you do that, it's usually reciprocated and you usually gain something from it, if not immediately, in the long run, through a shared experience, connection, or just for the fact that you feel so much better as a result. So I think you can't come to Italy and be passive. You have to come here and be ready to put effort in and to change yourself and shape your life to be exactly what it is that you really wanted it to be when you decided that you wanted to move here. The third thing that building this community has taught me is that nothing is personal. Now, I think when you start something, whether it be a business or you're creating something where people can visibly see what's going on, I think that it's very easy to take things personally. I think within a membership model, especially a subscription-based service, this is especially so because people see members come and they see members go. But I would say one thing, that when I started this membership community, I knew the model behind it. I knew that with any kind of membership community, people will come and go. Once they've received what they need, they go. Unless people are really invested into it, in which case they are definitely people that will be with you on every step of the way and will gain the most from it. But it's just the natural way that this particular model works. If people are kind of looking at their expenditure, the first thing that's going to go is a subscription-based model. Like, we all know that this is how things work. But I also think that, not everything is for everyone. And so, people might join something and not really enjoy it or not really gain from it what they wanted, because it's not for them. And that's something else we have to remember. Nothing is ever personal. Now, for the majority of my members, they've been there since the beginning. I've had some join and after a couple of months they've gone, but then I've really understood that those members perhaps got what they needed and left. And that's perfectly natural. Like, people join these communities sometimes just to get the answers that they need to their questions, and then they're not really invested in them enough to continue and stay and build connections. I've had one other member leave who I dedicated an episode to on my podcast because she's decided that maybe Italy is not the country for her, in which case I'm grateful to her for reaching out to me and telling me that this was the case, first and foremost, but also for recognizing that this isn't the right moment for her now in her life as it is. And that takes courage on one hand, but also on the other, it's amazing that she's able to realize that now and not when it's too late and you're already here and you've invested all your time and money. So I feel like, there are lots of reasons why people come and go within a community space. But one thing I will say is nothing is ever personal. And it's the same in life. Like, when you're here in Italy, if you are encountering people that are not very polite or don't really make an effort with you, or you're finding certain aspects of life here really challenging, nothing is personal. You must always remember this. I think it's very easy to think, oh gosh, I did something wrong, or it's the way that I am as a person, or I'm not doing enough, or whatever it may be. But I think in those moments when you're facing challenges and difficulties here, you do have to look at the situation quite honestly and be like, can I improve? Can I do something differently? Absolutely. But I don't think that you should necessarily take everything to heart, because otherwise I think that you allow your experience to be ruined or dictated to by the actions of others, and you are no longer in control of your life in the way that you should be. And so that is something really, really important to remember. I once read something about how if you allow the way that you feel to be dictated to by the way that people treat you and the way that people are with you, your life will constantly be like that of a roller coaster. You're always going to have ups and downs, twists and turns, because people have stuff going on in their lives. Sometimes they don't want to speak to you. Sometimes they could be quite abrupt with you, but it's not necessarily because of you. It's usually because of them. It's the same with social media. If you post a comment on a social media post and you're suddenly jumped on by everybody around you and they're saying, no, it's not this, it's not that, it's not true, whatever it may be, you've just got to remember that those people don't know you. And so their responses are coming from their own life experience. And maybe they received backlash for something that they said about Italy in the past. And so, it's just this kind of ripple effect that carries on. So just remember that nothing is ever personal. And I think if you can approach life in this way, in the way that I really am now, especially with this community space as well, I'm learning to take feedback from people, grow, learn, evolve, and be constantly ready to kind of transform my experience. I think that's a really healthy way to be. But to take what people say to you to heart, I think can be like more damaging and can definitely knock your confidence. So just be really, really mindful of that. The next lesson I've learned is that comparison will undo everything. Now, I have to be honest with you, when I started this community in January, I didn't really look around too much at what was going on around me because I was so set on the idea. I was like, this is something I've always wanted to do. I knew that at that point, there weren't many other groups with solely focused on Italy. So I felt quite confident in that respect. But then a couple of months down the line, I started to kind of search and see if there were any other groups. And lo and behold, in the months that had followed after I launched mine, other groups had started to emerge with a similar focus. And I did have a moment where I was a bit like, goodness, people have just kind of latched onto this idea and are making it something very similar themselves. And then I had this kind of wake up call, if you like, where I was like, a lot of those groups that I was reading, their content appeared to be generated from AI. Also, I remembered that my experiences are mine, my personality is mine. I've really benefited, I think, from building my brand for 5 years on YouTube and really showing up and being present in like talking about the reality of life here. And I feel like people have gotten to know me and to understand who I am. And as such, it's made it easier for me to have some kind of credibility with the community space that I'm building. And I would say that, that can't be easily replicated. Everybody's going to have different experiences, but you can be a voice in a very loud room, or you can be the loudest voice in that room just because you have got the credibility and you've been shown up for long enough with plenty of free content and everything else that you do to prove that you are passionate about what you do. And I feel like that is the thing that I've really, really learned from this experience. But then how that plays out for you is that you've got to stop looking at what other people are doing, unless you're going to do it in a way that teaches you something. Because the internet is full of people that will tell you it's easy to live in Italy. You can learn a language in 30 days. It's everybody else who struggles. It's because, they're not doing something right. You can have a great life here. You create your reality. I do believe in this. I'm a little bit woo-woo, it's true. But essentially, creating your reality doesn't take away from the things that are outside of your control. Creating your reality in that sense just means that you basically focus on the things that are in your control, which is your perspective and the way that you handle things. But it doesn't mean that you can control external circumstances. It's just from within that you can control. And so I really think sometimes that you have to remember that no two people's experiences are ever going to be the same. And you just have to accept that comparison is unhealthy unless you're going to use it in a way that helps you to get better in some sense. If you read a post and somebody is saying that, they were struggling with learning Italian, but now they've discovered this method and they've learned it in X number of days, well, there's some lesson that you can take from that that's going to help you to improve. But if you are someone who is just constantly looking at other people and then using that to beat up on yourself, like, trust me, that will undo any good things that you are working on. And I learned this very quickly with my community. I've just stopped looking at what everyone else is doing, because for a moment it did knock my confidence. And I was like, no, I've got to focus. I know what I'm doing. And so you've just got to carry on with the way that you're living. And so if you're planning to move to Italy or you're already living here, you have to lean into your own experiences, learn from others by all means, but do not compare yourself negatively to them, because it's going to undo any of the good things that you could experience in this country. And the final lesson that I've really learned from building this online community is that the greatest lessons you're going to learn are going to be from real people. Now, something that I've always leaned into is the fact that experts can tell you procedures, but real people can tell you lived experiences, and there is a difference. I believe that you should absolutely listen to the experts whenever you're dealing with any kind of legal matters or issues to do with visas or bureaucracy, buying a house, whatever it may be. Absolutely, you need to understand the ins and outs of those procedures. And so you do need to speak to experts in those situations. However, when it comes to like human experiences, I think that's when you need to lean into learning from other people who also live in Italy. One of the things that I'm really proud of within my community is that I started to create this In Conversation With series, and I'm bringing people in who have moved to Italy themselves. Some have lived here for many years, some have been here a few years. There's a real mix. And I'm letting them talk about their experiences. And it is so wonderful because we can learn so much from different people, hearing their perspectives, listening to the way that they manage things here in Italy, and also in a way understanding through them that, of course, people have different experiences here. And so this is something that I'm really passionate about, because you can be told do X, Y, and Z when you move here to Italy, but there's a human element underneath that. There is a holistic approach to moving here. It isn't a tick box exercise, like I've always said. There is work that you've got to do on yourself, on your mindset, on adapting, on kind of navigating the nuances of life here that are outside of a document or bureaucracy procedure. And so that is when learning from other people really helps. And I think it's the same when you start living here in Italy. Listening to people around you, listening to the experiences of others, observing as much as you can. I've become a real people watcher in recent months, because I notice that when I watch people, I learn something about them. Maybe it's their routine, their habits, the way they respond in different situations. Maybe also it's the fact that I start to understand people on a deeper level just based on the way that they react in a particular situation. So it's been really fascinating to do that. But I honestly think you can learn so much from other people. There is this kind of nuanced argument, if you like, where people say, you know, oh, you want to avoid expat in presence communities because you don't just want to be hanging out with the expats, you also want to be hanging out with local people. But I feel like we need to go back a few steps, because at some point you will arrive at the point where you make local friends, but that doesn't happen the minute you step off the plane. And so having that community initially to give you that confidence, and of course, you know, you may end up making lifelong friends, who knows, but even at the beginning, just to have that confidence, build yourself in this country, learn from how other people have done it ahead of you, and just feel like, you know, you have a support network. This makes a radical difference to your experience. So I think there needs to be less judgment about those kind of in-presence communities, and also more acceptance of the fact that they are really necessary, especially at the beginning. I mean, that's what fundamentally changed my experience here, for example. And I don't think I'll be sitting here now with the confidence that I have if I hadn't discovered that group. And so I think it's this, you know, there are so many lessons that I've learned from building the Aperitivo Lounge community, the vulnerability, the showing up, the being present. And if you're interested in this community space, as I've been referencing it all video long, I'll put a link up here and also below. It's for anyone at any stage of the journey, whether you're planning to move here or you're already living here. We've got people at every single step of the process, but it's just a great space to learn from each other, build those connections, and actually kind of feel supported. Because I think the reason people give up on their dream of moving to Italy or even building their life here is for that lack of support that they feel, because not everybody gets it, and you deserve to be surrounded by people who do. If you've enjoyed this video, this is the one I recommend you watch next. I'll see you in the next video.